Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
A note to listeners. The following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
Right, I think she's dead on. She's 100% right on it. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies, a couple hundred homicides and death investigations, and then I was a deputy coroner before that, so I've seen a lot. She describes it to a T.
It was to the point to where I was being threatened with my life and my kid's life if I ever said anything. They just seen the car fly by, and they said the car sat down there for about 15 minutes, and then it just flew back out.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
Today marks just over 4 months since the podcast launched. The support that we have received in not only the community in Oklahoma, but across the country and around the world has been amazing. But our work is not done yet, and we still need your help. If you have any information that will assist in the investigation of Molly and Colt, now is the time to talk.
You can also help the cause by going to the Facebook pages Operation Find Molly Miller and Partners in True Crime to show your support and purchase an Operation Find Molly Miller t-shirt. All the proceeds from the t-shirts will go towards any additional searches that need to be done, bringing in investigation experts, creating awareness campaigns, and also for a possible Molly and Colt memorial to be created in their honor.
On today's episode, we're going to circle back with former 30-year veteran of the Illinois Department of Law Enforcement and Detective Division Commander Jodi Barth.
Since we first interviewed Jodi about this case, she has been going over all of the information and evidence available to her about the case and has come up with some findings as well as questions. Jodi has always told us from the beginning that this case is solvable, and we believe her.
We're excited to hear what theories Jodi has come up with and her thoughts on the case and where we should go from here.
All right, so went through, Cindy's still going through your little paper document here that you sent. I read it, and it's very detailed, but I wanted to just talk to you first about the last couple episodes and the recordings that we've kind of released, and obviously we're not releasing anybody's names and everything. I mean, you know who these people are, but wanted to kind of get your reaction on any one of those last couple recordings. We're going to continue to release those because I think they're important to this case. There's information in all these recordings that I think that we can all glean and kind of help connect some dots here. So I just wanted to get your perspective as a former law enforcement person, an investigator, and what you thought about some of those recordings.
Sure. Well, what I like about them is that they're information from a relatively short time period after this all occurred. I think that they're probably a little more pristine in at least the information that we're being told. From what I can piece together, I think that there is a lot to it, and that I tend to believe that a lot of this was taken away from the Nipp property very early on, and perhaps went over to the other areas that were talked about, the Horseshoe and the Valley areas and things like that. It makes sense to me just from listening. I don't have the opportunity to actually see them I'm not talking to them in person, but just from listening to them, I like the spontaneity. I like what I hear. I don't hear a lot of what I would think kind of reciting what they've been told to say. It seems like it's pretty organic, the information that they're giving. I'm impressed with it. I tend to believe that there's a lot of truth in what's being told.
Yeah, I think we agree. And one of the recordings, obviously, we only use the audio, but it is a videotape of a person, and so you got to see the person's face, their body language, and we've actually sent that tape out to a body language expert and polygrapher to kind of have that analyzed. But I'm curious on what they say. But my gut level, and I don't know about you, Cindy, I thought it was pretty compelling and interesting, and this person did not look like they were lying.
No, when I first watched it a long time ago, I said the same thing. When I heard it, I felt like she was telling the truth. When you see her face, there's really no doubt. I mean, there's no reason for her to say any of this. She's terrified. You can see it.
Exactly. And that's very important. You know, a lot of people will say some of these people do this because they want attention and they're looking for attention and things like that. What could happen to them as a result of coming forward is not the kind of attention they're looking for.
No.
And why would you inject yourself into a double homicide in an area with people that you know are dangerous unless you're crazy?
Right. And I don't think these people are crazy at all.
No.
I think it's very compelling. And here's the other thing, especially the one where the photos are talked about and the other physical evidence is talked about. That information is put out there that can be corroborated or could be corroborated. People who are lying, they're making things up. They don't put out information that can be corroborated. By injecting that evidence, that potential evidence, the photos of Molly and the other evidence, they're going out on a limb there. And that you don't see that when people are just making things up and they're looking for attention. They're actually putting stuff out there that you can follow up on.
Especially the fact that this person just disappeared after this. You know, she left the area very quickly.
Correct.
That's another interesting sign, because it seems like a lot of the people that live in that area don't leave that area.
Right. I just think it's an avenue they should be following up on. I just think that there's really good potential there.
Well, I think some of the things that I've talked to people close to this case that are investigating it is one of the things they talked about that they wanted to get analyzed is her description of what she saw and the decomp of Molly's face.
Right.
What did you, and we have it out to other people too, a medical examiner outside the state of Oklahoma and some other people to kind of get a analysis of what she's describing based upon what was done to Molly and whether or not the decomp and what she was looking at was accurate. What do you think, having had a lot of experience with that?
Right. I think she's dead on. She's 100% right on it. And I've seen a lot of dead bodies, a couple hundred homicides and death investigations. And then I was a deputy coroner before that. So I've seen a lot. She describes it to a T, especially, and this is a big one for me. It's always been a big one for me. The visual of it is one thing, but there is the smells involved with it. That's another thing. And she hit that nail right on the head in her description of what the odor, the smell that she experienced.
The smell that I thought she was describing was the methamphetamine.
She thought it was methamphetamine. And I have to admit, I have never smelled meth cooking or anything like that. But what she described to me in the way of an odor was exactly how I would describe death. A decomposing body. It's a smell. It's hard to articulate. It's hard to describe. It's a cross between a sweet and acidic smell. But what she said is you can't get it out of your nostrils again. That's exactly what happens. It like infiltrates and you can't stop smelling it for a long time. And that was, to me, that's how I would have described what I've experienced around decomposing bodies.
That would put the body pretty close where she was, wherever that was she was being kept.
It would. And I didn't get that impression that from how she described the whole area, unless it was in that house. And I think that I'm not sure if that house was unoccupied or not. But if it had been in the house or was in the house at the time, that would make sense. But she didn't go in there, but she was close to it. And I can attest to you, when I would get called out, I could always smell from outside, from the parking lot or from the curb, what I was going into if I had a decomposing body. But like I said, I don't know what meth smells like when it's cooking. I don't know any of that. But to me, the smell she described was very consistent with decomposition.
I've also been told that they went and investigated that location. I don't know how long after that person gave that statement, but they said they didn't find anything. But I'm guessing it had to be at least a couple weeks. Obviously, things can be cleaned up very quickly, especially if the story that she described, where she was being held against her will and then escaped, and they had someone out on the loose who might know something, might reveal something. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because we've gotten conflicting statements we've had people tell us that these people are lazy and they would leave stuff, they would leave clues, they would leave evidence. And then on the other flip side, we've been reached out to people who have lived in that community who were doing meth and also cooking meth. And they said, these guys, when they're cooking and making meth, they're not lazy people. They're not, in fact, they're hyped up on meth and they're paranoid and they almost overdo things.
Right. I don't think that they're stupid. I don't think that just a lot of things, that there's a lot of information out there, but there's so many things that I don't agree with. Is it Gary?
Yes.
I just don't agree with Gary. I think this was different in that I'm not sure that what happened with Molly and Colt was a plan, was supposed to happen that night. I tend to think that something happened that caused all of this to go awry and caused this to happen. But I think that they knew instinctively that this was something they did not want on their property right at that time. I think they kind of thought that maybe people would be looking. And so I tend to believe they moved everything away. But it's just my gut on this. It's just from things that I've heard. Why they didn't find that car for 2 weeks, I tend to believe it's because the car wasn't there for 2 weeks. I tend to believe that they did move that off of there for a time and then brought it back later. It just doesn't seem right to me that this was just a haphazard event.
No, I agree with you. I never thought it was just accidental like that the car was just sitting there for 2 weeks. I never believed that either. It always seemed to me suspicious. And when we did go see Joe Russell, we did see this boneyard of cars, and he has this junkyard that's full of cars. It could have been very easy for them to have just moved it over there and used a different car or switched cars or done something. I'm just looking at this report that you did, which is extensive, which is impressive, and thank you for doing this. One of our biggest questions always was, there was 1 million calls the night of the chase from Sabrina to Conn's mom and to Jennifer Nipp, Conn's aunt. So we all knew that they were in touch with each other throughout the night during this chase and that her car had not been stolen, which is obviously why she ended up going to jail for insurance fraud. Melissa Greenroyd, Conn's mom, has always been someone that we need to speak to because she has said a lot of things that implicate that this is more than what everybody's saying, that Conn had done more than just drive the car that night. I think it's interesting to see it all laid out like this, that how many times that she was called by Sabrina. But I think for me, looking at your report, the most interesting part is obviously the stuff that was found in Conn Nipp's car, which is Conn's dad. We had asked a long time ago what had happened to all of this stuff, and there was no answer. I'm not going to say who I asked, but we did ask someone, and they just didn't have an answer, which I always thought was suspicious.
And I think also it's very suspicious, but I also think your analysis is almost like in addition to the day of and all the calls and stuff like that. What you did was you went back even further, even before this happened, and it almost kind of created like the prequel of what Conn was doing, is stealing cars, sometimes from just people he knew, and then just running him up to his starting chases, sometimes just running him up to that farm of his up on Long Hollow Road and either abandoning him or going up there and stripping them. So tell us a little bit about what you found in your analysis of the kind of prequel behavior that led up to the fatal chase of Molly and Colt, the disappearance.
In law enforcement, in investigations, one of the things that is very important to us is looking at patterns or deviation from patterns. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back and see what Conn was like. What could I document of his activities around that time period? And so it was very interesting going back. I mean, his history goes back to around 2010, 2011, where he started becoming known to local law enforcement. But back then it was basically possession of, controlled substance negligence and DUI and things like that. Even though there were a couple felony charges in there, nothing ever seemed to happen to him. He would get arrested, but then it would just kind of fall away. It was either receive probation or fine or whatever, but nothing really significant happened to him early on. So then it looked like around the beginning, the very first one, roughly, is around February of 2013, where he kind of starts this spree with the cars. And that point is when the chase, I think that was the one with the chase with the trooper he had. Yeah, it was February 13. This one actually was an interesting one. This was the Silver Mustang. And the Silver Mustang is important because that comes up in the context of the Molly and Colt disappearance. This one was a Silver Mustang. It was reported stolen in February of 2013. In March of 2013, an off-duty police officer from Carter County was working security detail on Long Hollow Road, and he comes up on the Silver Mustang who's blacked out in the road in front of the Nipp's property. And lo and behold, it turns out to be occupied by three people, the driver of whom he recognizes as Conn. And so Conn lies to him about who he is, but he knows it's Conn Nipp, and he tells him he's there to watching property. Well, he knew that wasn't true. Long story short, he tells him to leave the area. The deputy tells Conn to leave the area. He does what he does on all of his pursuits. He speeds off, does donuts, sprays up gravel, and disappears on his grandfather's property, basically. So that was in March. Interestingly enough, police officers investigating that got a hold of Joe Russell and told him about this back in March. So that was the first one. That was a stolen car out of Carter County. It was a Mustang, a Silver Mustang, a 2011 Silver Mustang. And Conn Nipp is seen driving it. It was the end of February it was stolen. He was seen driving it in March, or like March 1st and 2nd.
And there's even a photo, and there's even a photograph of him inside it, isn't it?
Yes. That was the deputy who was working the part-time job, as he was waiting for the Love County deputy to come and meet him at the location after Conn took off. He started searching Conn's Facebook, and there was a post in there from 5 hours earlier of Conn sitting in that car in the same clothes that he had on when the deputy encountered him. And the caption is, "Catch us if you can."
Wow.
Under that. Yeah. Yes. Anyway, that car, interestingly, later on in April, there was another car stolen, and it was found on Nipp's property. The sheriff got back in touch with Captain Paisley, who was the investigator. Parsley. I'm sorry. Yes, Parsley, who was the investigator on the Silver Mustang, and told him that Conn had been arrested. This was in April then, that Conn had been arrested on some Carter County warrants, but that no stolen vehicles were located on the Nipp's property. When in fact, when he was arrested for that, they arrested him they were out there looking for a different stolen car that included some farm equipment that it was towing. They found the farm equipment on the land, but not the vehicle that was towing it. So he wasn't really forthcoming with Captain Parsley on that he in fact did recover stolen equipment, but I guess they didn't recover the Mustang at that time. Interestingly enough, they did eventually recover the Mustang from that property in July. There's that.
Let's just make it clear about the Mustang. Conn Nipp told Rob Nichols and Devin Johnson that Molly and Colt were out by the Silver Mustang, where he had dumped the Silver Mustang. So everybody knew that Conn had stolen that Silver Mustang and dumped it in the field.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if the Mustang wasn't there in April when they found the other ones, or if they just didn't look that far. If they stopped because as I understand it, there's all kinds of places back there where it could be. But they eventually found it there on July 29th. The sheriff wrote a report that said he received a tip. How they found that Mustang, interestingly, is also connected to Molly and Colt, in that it was while Captain Parsley was participating in a search for Molly and Colt that several people told him, this was on July 20th, where several people told him that they saw a Silver Mustang on the Nipp property. And so he contacted Love County and told him that. That was on the 20th. On July 29th, Russell says he received a tip and he went out to Nipp's property, got permission, and voila, he found the silver Mustang on Nipp's property.
Well, it's also interesting because it's Captain Parsley. And from reading your prequel to what had happened, there's multiple occasions where Captain Parsley had interactions with Conn Nipp that nothing happened because of Joe Russell. So this is not...
Right.
So Molly and Colt, the night that this chase happened with Molly and Colt, wasn't the first time that Captain Parsley had an interaction with Conn under these circumstances. You can imagine the frustration for him when he's trying to arrest this guy or get this guy for all the things that he's been doing, and Joe Russell just keeps impeding upon it and stopping it.
Right. I mean, all of these things culminate in Joe Russell's area at the Nipp's property, and none of them, the only one that was ever really prosecuted was the chase on the night of July 7th, and I think they might have included the subsequent chase in January of 2014 in John Nipp's truck, January, I think, of 2014.
Well, wait. I don't think he was arrested for the Molly and Colt chase. I think he got arrested in January for that second chase, and they arrested him for that. But
I thought they charged him with because the OHP had two investigations going. They had the chase in 2014, in January of 14, and then they had the investigation into chase and the eluding from July 7th.
I think basically the way they wrote it up was when they arrested him for the 2014 one, OHP,
right.
They alluded to the fact that it was also because of the Molly and Colt chase as well. So I don't know if he got charged with that, but the one he got charged with, which he ended up getting
4 years.
He got 10 years.
10 years.
But he only served 4 of that sentence.
2014.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when we spoke to Ronnie Hampton, the OHP commander, that he really wanted to pursue that because he knew what happened in July of 2013. He knew those guys were responsible. So he said, I'm going to get this guy off the street somehow. Fortunately for everyone, Conn's habits of just kept on coming, and they weren't going to let it go by this time. They weren't going to let Love County handle it, and they handled it. And they were able to capture and get a conviction. And I was shocked that he got out after 4 years. But apparently he's still on probation because he got 10 years probation as well. 10 years and then 10 years of probation. So
right.
I mean, I just think the timeline's really interesting too here because you're looking at April 19th, 2013. This is like a few months before Molly goes missing. This is interesting. Okay, so April 19th, 2013, this is the Wilson Police Department offense report. And it's vehicle theft, and there were 2 victims. And the witness was Molly Miller.
Right.
And the suspect was Tanner Skelton, Molly's boyfriend, Molly's ex-boyfriend. That was like one of her serious boyfriends, Tanner Skelton. And the other suspect was James Conn Nipp. And again, Captain Parsley responds for a report of an automobile theft. He meets with Angela and Molly Miller, and they notice that the son's truck was missing out of the driveway. She's saying that it was a white Chevy cab truck with 3 stickers on the rearview mirror. And then after noticing that the vehicle's missing, she said they couldn't find the keys. Okay, so then Parsley comes back a couple days later and says that, and she says that she received a call from several people saying that Conn Nipp had possession of the stolen vehicle, which he received from Tanner Skelton, which is Molly Miller's ex-boyfriend.
Right.
The only 2 people that could have taken the keys to the vehicle was Tanner Skelton or Molly.
Or Molly, right. They were fighting. They were fighting earlier that night. They had a huge argument. And that was actually, Parsley came back actually later that same night. So this was all in one day that he found out that Conn Nipp was the prime suspect in this, and Tanner. And so he contacts Sheriff Russell, and that's when Russell says, hey, on the 2 days later, he calls Parsley back and says, hey, we arrested Conn Nipp on Carter County warrants, and there were no stolen vehicles on that land. Well, that's the same day that they found the stolen equipment, farm equipment that was being towed by a different stolen vehicle. And so he was not forthcoming. And then this is the one where Parsley is on July 20th, where he's told about
It says on Saturday, July 20th, which is about a couple of days after Molly and Colt went missing.
Right.
They were working a missing person search party on Long Hollow Road, and several subjects stated to him that a white 2008 Chevy truck was seen in the heavily wooded area of Long Hollow Road, and
Right.
Parsley notified Love County Sheriff's Office. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
was
I
the
think
truck
that's-
that had been stolen a few months earlier.
Right. And they recovered it and processed it. Didn't get anything off of it. Other than was interesting was I found this part interesting. The one thing they Parsley did immediately after he took the report was he checked with OnStar, because the truck had an OnStar navigational system. And very shortly after they discovered it stolen, they checked with OnStar. OnStar said they couldn't locate the truck, that the account had been disabled. And what they find one of the only kind of significant things I think they find when they're processing the vehicle is that the OnStar navigational system had been removed. So they were smart enough to remove that right away. Then the next one after that, I think, is very interesting. That was on May 5th. So we've got February, April, March, and now May. We've got yet another incident involving Conn and a police chase. Only this one, the guy, there was somebody with him. So his name was Gary Clifton, and he actually was with Conn Nipp in his own truck, but Conn insisted on driving. Apparently that was another pattern of Conn's. If they were in a car, Conn always wanted to be the driver. They had gone out to, he says, a cousin of Conn's, but he says he has a teardrop tattoo under his eye, and I'm not sure if that's not Colby Barrett or not. But in any event, they went over to his residence, to this cousin's residence for a while. Conn went inside. Gary Clifton waited for him outside for like an hour or so. And then they're driving back to the Long Hollow area on Oswald Road, and Conn starts driving very, very fast. Clifton tells him to slow down. They go up over a hill, and lo and behold, there's a state trooper there who turns around and starts chasing him. He takes him down the normal path down to Long Hollow, then goes off-road, spraying gravel, things like that, what he always does. But what's important is that he eventually intentionally crashes the car on the property into some small trees. Now, interestingly enough, in this particular case, Conn Nipp took a 12-gauge or took a pump shotgun with him before he got in the car. Gary Clifton said he actually, during the chase, started to roll down the window to shoot the shotgun at the trooper. And Gary said that he talked him out of that was stupid. So he brought the shotgun back in. But eventually, after he crashes the car, he gets out, meaning Conn gets out. He takes the shotgun, says, I'm going to need this. And he runs off, leaving Gary out in the woods. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So Gary is lost in the woods all night. He's walking, and finally at daybreak, he finds Asphalt Road, and he calls a family member to come and get him. But before that, he called Conn on his cell phone, and Conn acts like he doesn't even know what he's talking about. And he just finally tells Gary, report the truck stolen, and hangs up on him. And Gary's family member comes and picks him up and takes him to Love County and waits for the trooper to file a witness statement. And they do go back. They did find the truck on the property. They did get a statement. This is one of the only statements I ever saw from Conn Nipp, and it looks like a second grader wrote it. But he basically says, I don't know what he's talking about. And I heard that, and he's talking about Gary. He's saying Gary left his house at dark, he wasn't with him, and that he heard that Gary was going to try to make it look like he did it because he thought Conn was talking to his girlfriend. I mean, that's like 7th grade stuff. But in any event, it just dies there on the vine. Nothing happens. They've got an eyewitness who was with him who marks off on the police report that he's willing to press charges, and nothing happens.
And it's the same exact thing that happens a month later to Molly and Colt.
Right. It's exactly the same. He's got an established pattern, and everything. I mean, Joe Russell is out at the Nipp's property constantly looking for stolen vehicles, finds them, and there's never any charges. I don't get it. Well, I do get it, but
yeah. I mean, we do get it. So, I mean, so it's just probably talk to this guy, Gary Clifton. I'd love to see what his experience was.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, I mean, this is so awesome that you did this, Jodi. This is great because we've always wanted to like talk to someone like yourself about all these findings, and it's been difficult to get.
Well, it's confusing to explain. Yeah, it's confusing because they overlap each other.
Exactly.
Because when you've got one stolen, you're looking for another one, you find the first one, you don't find the second one, then you find the second one. It's all crazy. But the important part is they have a nucleus, and that nucleus is Conn Nipp. And there's a second nucleus, Joe Russell.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. He's the other component of the equation.
Right. He is never. They know that all these things are happening out there. And I found it interesting. I didn't put it in this report, but I remember there was a statement on the time that they found the equipment, the farm equipment out there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a statement from Conn Nipp saying that the police had taken it from their property and that they didn't know it was there and that they had no claims on it. And it's just like, come on. I mean, it's just one right after another. There was the last one I have on here. There was another a car reported stolen July 28th, which is, of course, after the Molly and Colt. And while this one, it doesn't really connect, there's no identification back to Conn, the pattern is exactly the same. And it's found by Love County in the middle of a road, in the middle of an intersection with the typical damage to it when they get done with a vehicle. It was left in the middle of an intersection. So I don't know if it's connected, but I put it in there because it's very similar and it certainly follows the pattern.
When Conn was in that high-speed chase in January 2014, he was in his dad's pickup truck.
Yes.
And when they processed that truck, they found a bunch of evidence.
Yes.
Can you walk us through this evidence? Because it's extensive and never really been investigated, or there's never been any answers about this evidence.
Right. So the evidence when the truck, what Conn did was he ran from the trooper. He ran off road just like he always does. He ran through their property. And it seems like a lot of things, the primary travel pattern is by the shop, over by the Nipp shop back there. And
wait, let's just clarify that this happened in 2014. So this is 6 months after Molly and Colt go missing. Conn is in yet another high-speed chase.
Right.
And he's driving his father's pickup truck.
Right. He goes off road. He loses the trooper with gravel and things like that. He gets and he takes the truck back home, but he parks it out back and he runs in the house and gets in bed. And so the trooper goes to the house and they eventually find the truck out back. John Nipp is there as well. And he gives them permission. They go out, they find the truck, they confiscate it and take it in for processing. When they processed it, they found one work glove with what looked like blood on it. That was in the front seat of the pickup. They found a white baseball cap with a red B on it that may or may not have what looked like blood on it. That was photographed and collected. That was in the front, in the dash, the front dash. They found, which I found was interesting, they found a pair of gray underwear with possible blood. They were in the rear seat of the pickup.
Was it female underwear?
No, it was men's underwear with blood. With that underwear was a pair of denim jeans, men's, with possible blood. They were right with the underwear. Then in the back of the truck, in the bed of the truck, they found 4 areas of what looked like blood in the truck at various areas. And they collected samples from all of those areas. And then they found a couple of what she called bullet defects in the front windshield. And interestingly enough, they were from the inside out. So somebody was shooting from the inside of the vehicle out of it at some point. And they also found a bunch of other stuff that I found very interesting that they photographed. I'm not even sure they photographed it, actually. They noted it, but did not collect it. And I thought, this is after Molly and Colt. One of the things they found in the driver's front door pocket was a cut black zip tie. Now, I know that could be for anything, but it comes to mind that it could have been used as a restraint too. So I'm thinking touch DNA might be there. Who knows? But they didn't collect that. They found an old cell phone without the battery. They didn't collect that. They found some slip-on shoes, which they didn't collect, and some miscellaneous trash and other items in the bed of the truck that they didn't collect. So, I don't know if there was some things missing there, but it sounds like they took everything that they thought might have blood on it. So I tracked all of that. They did send it to the lab, and they also got a DNA, a cheek swab from Conn Nipp. They got a search warrant for that. And so they submitted all of that to the lab. I have the lab receipts. The lab received it. But what I don't have is the analysis, the findings. So I don't know whatever became of it.
Now, in your experience, would that go to like a state lab?
It went to the OSBI lab.
Okay.
The other evidence that we know they submitted to the lab was the evidence that Phil Klein obtained during his investigation, and there was possible blood evidence with that on a couple of rags, along with the machete and a 9mm. And I did track. I had all of the reports from the lab. I found all of the reports from the lab on those items. And I have a lot of questions. The results report is very confusing to me. So the questions I have is, when I'm reading this report, was human blood present on any of the items? Because they're very confusing. One of the rags that had a blood stain on it, and this was a rag that the gun was wrapped in, I believe, when Phil got it. Their findings say presumptive testing indicated the possible presence of blood. However, the presence of blood could not be confirmed. And then on another rag that was submitted with that, they're saying that blood was not detected on the item, along with the machete, that blood was not detected. And then there was a bone that was submitted with that, I think, that was found during one of the searches. Mm-hmm. And they didn't even open that. They didn't open it, nor did they analyze it. And then on the gun itself, they're saying no blood-like staining was observed on this item. Now, interestingly, they put a note in there that possible hairs were observed on one of the rags, but were not collected or analyzed at this time. So from reading this, my questions are, is human blood present on any of these items? Were all of the items actually analyzed for the presence of human blood, including under the machete handle and inside the 9mm barrel? I doubt that they did that. And I think it would be important to determine whether that bone is human or animal, and, whether DNA can be obtained if it's human. And then on the hairs, are the hairs human or animal? And can we get any DNA? Hair is a great source of DNA. I don't understand why they just stopped.
So they didn't indicate the hair whether or not it was human or animal.
No, they didn't even analyze it. They didn't do anything with the hair. They kept it. They just left it where it was. They didn't do anything with it. And they say that the disposition says that all the items will be returned to the submitting agency, which was the OHP. If DNA analysis is requested, please submit known reference samples from Nipp, Barrick, Miller, and Haynes, and then resubmit all the items. So it just seems like it was a very preliminary examination to me, and I don't know if we know that they have the DNA profiles of at least Conn Nipp, Molly, and Colt. So I have questions regarding all of that blood evidence from both of those submissions, from the pickup truck as well as from the evidence that Phil Klein gave them.
Yeah.
I think those are unresolved issues in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, they may have gotten some results that they felt like didn't really go anywhere. That seems to be, OHP has been pretty good on this. So I think we would have, if they wanted to connect the dots, they probably would have. Like I said before, mm-hmm. They're the only law enforcement body there that seemed to be doing the right thing. But their hands are tied. Once it gets to a certain point, their hands are tied. And they've pretty much told us so, because we've reached out to them and they said that we would love to help, but our hands are tied.
Right. I mean, the OHP clearly did. They follow up, they invest there, they interview people, they write great reports, but I'm just finding the lab analysis very confusing to me.
Yeah. Well, what's your experience with that? I mean, you've dealt with labs before in your career. Obviously, in your career, they didn't have the vast amount of technology that they have now. But what's that process like? I mean, is there a lot of nuance? Is there a lot of? I would imagine it's like a science lab that uses a lot of trial and error trying to figure things out.
Right. I mean, they're very detailed. They're very detailed. They go, at least my experience is, I would never write a report like this. The presumptive testing indicated the possible presence, but could not be confirmed. It's like, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean you didn't have enough blood sample? Does it mean it should go on a little bit further than that? The lab process itself, everything was accounted for. Every piece of evidence was always accounted for. And if you couldn't do anything with it, you said that. And you said why you couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
If you didn't have something to compare it to, for instance, I was a latent print examiner. If I had a latent print, I would examine that print. I would say whether or not it was identifiable. Did it have enough points, enough individual characteristics to identify it back to a certain individual? If I didn't have comparison prints to compare it to, I would say that, and I would say it's retained for further comparison purposes. But I would account for every single latent print that I took or that was submitted to me. Our serologists would do the same thing. Our ballistics people would do the same thing. Every piece of evidence that was submitted would be accounted for in full. What happened to it, what you did with it, where you got it, and where its disposition.
This is all fantastic information. We really appreciate you going the deep dive here, and you basically created the anatomy of Conn's behavior beforehand, leading up to the chase and the disappearance of Molly and Colt. This is not something that was isolated. This is not behavior that was just came out of nowhere. This guy Conn knew he could do all this stuff, get away with it, did it whenever he wanted to, and Joe just turned a blind eye. And had these prior infractions have been prosecuted the way they should have had, Molly and Colt could still be alive.
Exactly. It's too bad, this is my personal opinion, but something like this, I mean, if I were a family member, I'd be taking this to an attorney and saying, do we have a wrongful death action, something like that, or a civil case? Because if just one of those had been prosecuted, maybe Molly and Colt would still be alive. It just makes me sick.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be checking in soon again with some more information, but we appreciate it, Jodi.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is just the tip of the iceberg, guys.
I think so.
It's just a tip.
Up next, we're going to play for you a tip that we received a couple months ago, right after our 4th episode aired.
A tipster called in to give us some shocking information. The woman was terrified to speak because of threats that had been made on her life if she ever told anyone what she knew. But after listening to the podcast, she decided that it was time for her to tell her story because it could help us, and we're very grateful for her bravery. People out there listening, I just want to reiterate that we can't be afraid of these bullies, because if we are, they will continue to hurt people. The only way that we are going to be able to get to the end of this is by people like this coming forward and telling the truth, no matter how scared they are.
We have withheld her name as well as some other names she mentions to protect their identities.
Sorry, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Thanks for calling. Paula said that you wanted to talk to us, so I wanted to call you back because we're trying to help her. So if you have anything.
Okay. It was to the point to where I was being threatened with my life and my kid's life if I ever said anything.
Understood.
I tried to say something years back, but then that happened and I got scared, so.
All right. So we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Why don't you tell us what you want to tell us, and then I'll ask you some questions that Paula asked me to ask.
Okay. I was just told that a friend of mine was working that morning and they seen the car fly by, and they said they stopped on Oswald Road, I guess. At the end of Oswald Road, there is a lease road with old wells and stuff on it, and they was working on the first well, and they said that they stopped at the third well and was there for like 15 minutes. And I told my ex-husband about it, who used to be a cop, and he went himself to look, and he said he found some clothing, but it didn't match the description of what Molly or Colt were wearing, which I'm thinking, well, that doesn't matter really, because if the guy that did it, has DNA all over his freaking clothing and shit, he's gonna shed it.
When did this happen?
It was the next day. It was on that Monday, the morning of this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it was like 5 something in the morning, they said, when they was at work.
And they saw someone at the well?
Apparently it's an old well, and it's supposed to be at Elise Road at the end of Oswald Road. So I couldn't exactly tell you what road, and that's just all I was told.
And what did they see there? Did they see Molly or Colt or anyone?
They just seen the car fly by, and they said the car sat down there for about 15 minutes, and then it just flew back out.
The car that was in the chase?
Yes.
And then the person that told you this, was it someone that you trust?
Yes.
What do they think happened?
They think that the bodies were being dumped
in the well. It's interesting because we thought that the car was moved to that spot later. So can you just tell me one more time so that it's clear, because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this.
Okay, this was back whenever I was using dope, and my friend worked on the oil rig, and he told me that he seen them fly by, and they stopped at the second or third well. He was pretty sure it was the third well, and they sat there for about 15 minutes. The car didn't move for like 15 minutes, and then they just hauled ass out of there. They didn't have any idea what was going on.
Did they know
until later?
Did they see who was in the car?
No, they didn't say.
Did they know what kind of car it was?
It was the one in the description of the car that they was last seen in, the red one.
The Honda?
Mm-hmm.
And so who told you not to?
They told me that if I was to ever see anything, then me and my kids' lives would be in danger. So it's taken me a while, but now I tried to say something several years back, but I lost my courage and didn't.
Well, we understand why. Right. This is a very scary situation. Okay, so Paula's going to want to know specific questions. So she's asking me right now, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. This has been weighing on me for like ever. So, it just feels good to kind of get it off my chest.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. I know it's really hard.
I don't know if it's going to be of any help, but if it comes down to it, later, I can even give you my ex-husband's name, the cop that went and checked it out.
Yes.
Because I told him about it. I trusted him.
Is he still in the area?
And he lives in Hilton.
When he went down there,
He's not a cop anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What did he see when he went down there?
He said that he found some clothing kind of scattered underneath the brush and stuff. But he said that's all he's seen. And he said it didn't match the description of what they were wearing when they were last seen.
And it's an oil well?
It's supposed to be a lease road at the end of Ellsworth Road. And it's supposed to be the second or third well. He said he's pretty sure it was the third well in because they couldn't really see what was going on. They just seen the car go down there and park, and then it hauled us out of there.
And this happened on the morning of July 8th.
That morning that they went missing, yeah.
And what time did he say it was?
They was at work. It was like 5 something in the morning. They had just gone on shift.
So it couldn't have been Molly because she was talking to someone at 6:30 in the morning. Maybe it was Colt. Did he think that, from your ex-husband's perspective, because he was a cop, did he think that maybe what was his thoughts? What did he think had happened?
I don't know if he because I told him what I was told, about me and my kids would pay if I ever said anything. So I don't know if he just shrugged it off as nothing. I don't know if he actually really even went and looked, but that's what he told me, was that he found some clothing, didn't match the description, and that's basically where he left it with me.
Did he leave the clothing there?
Yeah, he said he picked it up with a stick to see if there was blood or anything on it, and there was nothing, and he just put it back down. Something about, I think he said a red shirt. I don't remember what else. It's been so many years ago. But I do know he said a red shirt. I remember that part.
The person that told you the information, we won't tell this name out in the public, but Paul is asking me, who was it?
See, this is where it gets scary.
I
understand. If you don't want to tell us, we understand.
No, but Paul, I know, but
I mean, I can.
Yeah, Paul is asking.
My name is to be left out.
No, your name.
100%.
This person's name we're not going to put out there either, because I don't want to get this person into a situation because it's dangerous.
Well, there's 2 of them.
Okay, and who's the other one? And where did they work?
For some oil field company.
Okay, so they were out there by the wells.
I believe, but I'm not positive.
Who was the other one?
Don't quote me. I'm not positive.
It's okay, honey. Thank you so much for doing this. You're trying to do the right thing and help this family. It's very nice of you. It's okay. We just want to help Paula. Okay.
Me too. This has been tearing me up for years, but I just can't do it anymore. So.
Were you friends with the Nipp family?
No. Didn't even know of them until all that happened.
But you knew Molly and Colt?
Mainly friends with Colt's family.
I'm so sorry. This is a horrible thing that everyone has had to go through. What is Colt's family saying about this? I mean, we've spoken to his brother in the past. I just want to...
Jesse?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him in so long, I don't know.
Did these two guys that told you this information, why did they tell you?
It was brought up in conversation over the internet because it was just, going through our phones and shit, and we were high, and he started talking about it, and then he told me, he's like, you can't say anything to anybody because they will come after you and your family. Yeah, I get it. I understand. Second time I was told by, and he told me it was like almost verbatim, word for word, exactly what told me. So I'm like, there's no way that can be fake or made up. I mean, something went down there. I mean, I don't know what went down there, but something went down there.
And both of them worked for that oil company?
Pretty sure stores that they worked for.
So they were both out there. Is that what happened? They both saw it?
Yeah. You could go through the company and maybe figure out which wells were running that day, which wells are shut down. Your best bet would be, because they was on the first well off the lease road that morning. So whatever well was running that morning, you're going to go 2 or 3 more down, and that's where all of this was supposed to have happened.
Did he see how many people were in the car?
Didn't say. He just said it flew by.
Was he scared?
And then it flew by when it went back out.
Were they scared?
No, it was just, they just thought it was some drunk kids playing around.
So why did they tell you later that they said that your life would be in danger if you said anything?
I guess because they know the Nipps.
So that's who they thought it was?
Yeah.
So it was at the end of Oswald. Can you just tell me that again so I can make sure it's clear for Paula?
I'm not sure, how far down, but they said the end of the Oswald Road, there's a lease road. And it goes off to the left. And these guys were working on the first well, and apparently the car stopped at the second and third well past them. And it stopped for about 15 minutes, he said, and they said to haul the ass back out of there. So they just figured that they was down there taking shots or doing bumps.
And then when they heard about all this, how did they put
That's when they put 2 and 2 together, and like that's what happened. I guess it's, like I said, I mean, it's just hearsay. I don't know for sure, but I figure I know this much, and it's at least worth checking out.
Well, you were threatened over it. Why would they threaten you if it wasn't accurate?
Yeah, that's why I haven't said anything in so long.
Understandable.
I've been really scared.
Understandable. I'm sorry you have had to go through this.
I haven't had to go through anything compared to what the family's going through.
I know. It's awful. It's so awful. But thank you so much for coming forward now. I mean, that's what we're asking people to do, because this has got to stop. This poor families have been suffering for so long, and
yeah,
it's too much now. That's why we're doing this for Paula, and for Colt.
I've dealt with a lot of death in my family over the past 3 months. It was whenever I started reading that, and then my aunt told me earlier that she heard the bodies had been burned, and I'm like, I have to say something. I just gotta get it off my fucking chest because I can't carry it anymore. Because if there is any truth to this story, then I needed to say it. Nobody else is going to, especially not the people that tell me not to say anything. So it's a good time to come forward, and it comes down to it, and you need just tell her to let me know. But otherwise, I really don't want to deal with it.
Sure, absolutely.
She's going to probably call you and ask you.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah.
God bless you, okay? You
God
just
bless
did a
you.
really nice thing for these people.
I just hope that something comes of it and we can get some peace.
Me too.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
We're going to be releasing new information and recordings that have never been heard before. We will also be talking to more power players in the legal field who will help us unravel the clues about what happened to Molly and Colt.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.